And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to GeekWatch, a subsidiary of the Monastery, the open bar of the internet. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have 1, 2, 3, 4 good brothers. Ha ha ha. We have the recovering Cowboys apologist, and the man who can hold a trophy above their head, unlike every for being a Raptors guy, unlike every other team in his city. Good brother Cure. We have the living encyclopedia and the flamboyant flyer, good brother Flutter. We have the man taking over your anime, one pair of sunglasses at a time, good brother Shades. And we have the CEO of Xanatrix, sorry, Enterprise. God, I fucked this up. Good brother Xana.
It sounds like you need a pair of Zadare specs today, Monk.
Fuck you, man.
Don't make me get the bat.
Fuck you and fuck the white horse you rode in on.
Excuse me. Today is all about dark horses, good sir.
Let me ask my chef what's cooking. He says he is simmering with rage.
This is gonna be one of those nights, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. Yep. So, it's been a while since we've tackled something Tokusatsu related, and I have no shortage of options. We could go back to roasting idiot Reds again. That's always fun. We could talk about why Mr. Shirakura is the Antichrist. But for this sort of thing, I felt we needed to step a little bit beyond the obvious, because we don't do the obvious, the well-traveled path. We leave that for people like Anime America and Mother's Basement to do.
Ouch!
Ow!
Well, Jeff Fu does call himself a professional shitbag. He has to prove it somehow.
Although, to be honest, if I think anybody's a professional, professional shitbag, it's Nux, and he owns.
Yeah.
At least we're not the at least I'm not the glorified pigeon.
Look, if I want a lot of pigeons, I'll just watch a John Woo film. But because of that, and because of the fact that there's enough people who will discuss the big two and the big three of Tokusatsu fairly regularly, we needed to tackle something a little bit different, something a little bit more up our particular alley, a bit more seinen than shonen, if you will, because we need to talk about GARO, and thus the topic for this week, Tokusatsu's Dark Horse, and I am fully aware of the little bit of punnage I ended up making by using that particular phrasing. That's not a bug, it's a feature.
Okay, now you sound like a AAA
God.
game company.
Oh please, I don't do surprise mechanics.
Okay, EA.
or crap loot boxes that gets me in trouble.
Moving on.
Now, the reason why I called GARO Tokusatsu's Dark Horse is despite it being around for several years and managing to break into the realm of anime, GARO is still highly undervalued, which is really criminal considering the people who worked on it. First off, the guy for whom this is his brainchild is Keita Amamiya, who has a lengthy history when it comes to his Tokusatsu experience, both as a designer and an artist.
Hell, even as a director, when it comes to the two Rider films that he directed during the Dark Ages.
Of those two, Kamen Rider Zeto is the better one. I've said that's the best of the Dark Age.
It is, I agree.
But there's also the fact that he has a lengthy amount of experience as a monster designer for various Sentai works. I think he really started on that front in, I want to say, the late 80s.
Let me check.
I've actually got to say he's done stuff for both Metal Hero and Sentai. Mm-hmm. Probably Choujin Sentai Live Man would probably be a big one. Of course, the really big one being Choujin Sentai Jetman. Mm-hmm. He also did stuff for Kamen Rider Black and Black RX, Kamen Rider Zeto and J. Another big one, another Dark Horse related stuff is the movie Mechanical Violator Hokkaider.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
good old Hokkaider.
Where I think a lot of what he would later bring into GARO, I think, is where it kind of tested the waters with that one.
Mm-hmm. I can see that, yeah.
That and of course Shin Kamen Rider.
Yeah, and Shin. I feel like Shin is going to be one of those things that needs its own episode because I have a mixed attitude about it. Yeah,
and Mikey brings up the fact that he worked on the latter two Onimusha games.
Yeah, he did. He technically only did character designs for Onimusha 2. The ones from 3 were the ones that were just carried over from the predecessor.
Yeah, but he also did stuff for games like the Genji Day of the Blade, mm-hmm. Shin Megami Tensei, He did a little work for one of the DLCs in Final Fantasy 14.
Yep.
Or one of the things for that. So yeah, game-wise, he's also got a lot of different stuff going on. So, and he even did a little comeback in Kamen Rider Decade. Which God, think about that.
Also, one of my personal favorite NES games that a lot of people didn't play at the time because it was a Blockbuster exclusive, Hagane.
That was Super NES, actually, not NES.
Super NES. Sorry.
Hagane. Yeah, I remember Hagane.
Hagane is an amazing game, and it very
Criminally
much is
underrated.
like the SNES answer to the Ninja Gaiden trilogy, but it's also fucking hard.
Yeah.
I mean, did you expect anything different?
No. At the very least, it doesn't it isn't dealing with bullshit hard like those fucking birds in the Ninja Gaiden trilogy.
Oh God, no! But it is a game that will kick your ass if you are not prepared.
No.
Like any other Nintendo hard game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen Let's Plays of Hagane.
Another thing that Amamiya is responsible for that a lot of people aren't aware of, and I wasn't aware of this until a few years ago, was doing the art for the Japanese version of Earth Dawn.
Oh.
Now, I do want to make clear that this was around the time when FASA Games had a working relationship with Kadokawa's tabletop game division called Group SNE, and two of their games got a Japanese not just a translation, but kind of a reworking for a Japanese audience, and those were Shadowrun and Earth Dawn. Now, Keita didn't have anything to do with the Shadowrun one, and the difference between that Shadowrun and the Shadowrun we got in the States is very significant. Almost to the point of feeling like two different games. But with Earth Dawn, it was a little bit more on point, and he didn't have anything to do with the rules, but he did do the art. And a blog in France called Foundation Draco had cataloged a bunch of the art, and it's definitely his style. Just with certain training wheels taken off, because obviously there's certain things you couldn't do when you're doing monster designs for Super Sentai.
Of course. Yeah. Or Metal Hero, yeah.
Now, just to give a bit of an example, here's the Now, I do want to warn you that it is in French, but
the language of cowards.
But if you look at that link that I've also put in the chat, you'll see some of the artwork that he did, and I'm pretty sure it's not even hiding that this is very much his art style.
Right.
Yeah.
He also did a damn good job, in my opinion. Although, admittedly, I have to wonder if he was taking some advice from the Lodos team. But of course he wasn't the only one involved. We also had Makoto Yokoyama, Kengo Kaiji, and Yasushi Nirasawa, who does have under his belt a lot of the monster design for Kamen Rider.
I was actually doing some. I actually did some research, and I pulled up GARO's IMDb, and you mentioned Makoto Yokoyama.
Yeah,
he's actually got quite the history, not so much as a director or a producer, but also more as a stunt man. More specifically, he did stunt work here in America.
Huh.
And as basically, he did stunt doubles for several seasons of Power Rangers.
Well then.
From Mighty Morphin all the way to Wild Force, and was stunt coordinator for several seasons.
Nice.
I did research on that too.
Now, when you say stunt, are we talking he was a suit actor or what, or was one of the coordinators?
Well, for several seasons he was for the first few seasons he was he did the stunt doubles for the White Ranger in Mighty Morphin, and then it looks like from Zeo to Wild Force he was the main stunt coordinator, or at least he was a stunt coordinator. Looks like he was the main stunt coordinator for Time Force, and then he went on to do. He did the action director for Kamen Rider the First, and he was also the director for a few episodes of Lightspeed Rescue and one episode of Time Force.
Well then.
So yeah, and then I look up Kengo Kaiji. Actually, yeah, he was a writer for a couple of other things. He actually was one of the writers for the Marvel anime. And he was also the series director for Ultraman Mabius.
Ooh.
Oh!
Now that's nice.
Yeah. Now, not seeing much as far as the other name I see is Ryu Kaneda, but I'm not seeing much big stuff to his name. The only thing I'm seeing is he was director for the original Boogie Pop and Others back in 2000 and Video Girl I. But up until Garo, he didn't really have much to his name. And he only did one episode of the original Garo. But he did do director for Makai Senki and Zero Black Blood.
Yeah. Now, Kengo Kaiji, the main thing that's under his belt is having a hand in the 2000 adaptation of Uzumaki. And
Weird. I'm not seeing that on his IMDb.
It was one of I think it was one of those. There were a lot of people who operate under pseudonyms for that one, which given how far removed it would be from the rest of his work, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
Neither would I.
Exactly.
And Yasushi Nirasawa, as I mentioned, has they've done a whole lot of concept art before then, including doing concept art for Soul Calibur, as well as the as well as set design for the better Vampire Hunter D movie. But Nirasawa was responsible for the undead design in Kamen Rider Blade, the worm design in Kabuto, the Imagine design in Den-O, the creature design in Decade, the creature design in Gokaiger.
Oh wow!
And the creature design in Amon, the Dark Side of Devilman.
Given a lot of those series and how their monster designs looked, I can see how that carried over into Garo, because a lot of those designs were very detailed, very distinct, and in a lot of ways, in certain series, especially stuff like Kabuto and that, very grotesque looking at times. Very monstrous.
Yeah.
Very.
Apparently another work, and I haven't seen this, but one of the other works that he was involved with was the Great Yokai War, which I may have to look into, looking at its entry, because the director is Takashi Miike. And now it was done in 2005, and that one I'm gonna have to look at that later, because Miike is nuts. You have no idea. You have no idea how much I was sweating when I found out that he was going to do the live-action Phoenix Wright.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh Jesus!
Now
and he did a good job too.
Yeah, he did. And I still it's on my bucket list, and I'll probably get to it. But I know that he also did a live-action take on Blade of the Immortal, which is a little bit more his speed. At the very least, it can't get any worse than the anime adaptation of Blade of the Immortal that just disappointed me because you have an anime that is going with a very detailed seinen art style, and you give it to fucking B Train.
Ooh.
Yep.
I got nothing against B Train, and they've done great work, but let's be honest, the only reason anybody knows who B Train is because of Yuki Kajiura. But
Lie.exe not found there.
But with these sort of people, you have a very well established group of individuals who had either worked in Tokusatsu or have some background in horror, and that's the thing that is really the focus because by all accounts, GARO is a horror series.
It is.
Yes, very much so. The whole thing is...
Hell, the monsters are called horrors for crying out loud.
Yes.
I was going to say.
Now I did hear in one case that in order to keep that they pulled a exploitation stunt in order to keep costs low by bringing in AV actors for one-off roles. I don't know if that's true, but hey, if it worked for the Grindhouse era, it'll probably work here.
And to be fair, a lot of JAV actors can be pretty decent people. I mean, have you seen Shibuya Kaho?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, most of the AV actors are good at acting in other ways as well. It's not...
And that's been proven in other Toku series.
Yeah.
Yep. It's also a good way for those people to start legitimizing their acting careers. I think GARO gave
That too, yeah.
gave chances to people who wouldn't have otherwise gotten them that way.
Yeah, while there is still somewhat of a stigma of adult actors in mainstream stuff, it's not as heavily stigmatized as it is here in the West.
No.
What? You used to do porn? Get out of my acting studio.
Right? Yeah, If you once you do porn, you might as well you're making that your career because you ain't doing anything else. Hi, Mia Khalifa, how you fucking doing?
Well,
yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Moving on.
Now,
making a point.
I do remember a friend of mine making a joke that GARO's conceit feels like what Bleach originally was, which on one hand I could certainly see that. On the other hand, I don't think it's an entirely fair comparison.
No.
Largely because of the fact that you're operating under a different set of rules instead of dealing with a divide between a human and spiritual world. GARO, I'd say, has very much more in common with the goth punk movement of the 90s.
I can see that.
So can I.
Right down to the fact that we have a guy in a long coat, wielding a sword and barely talking.
That too.
I mean, all he's missing is the fedora and the milady.
I wasn't going for the fedora. I was going for some motherfuckers always want to ice skate uphill.
That one too. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's just while that's a good example, every time I hear long black coat, sword, not talking very much, the only thing I can think of is, while you were out there dating, I was training in the ways of the blade.
Oh, God.
Oh, Jesus.
Ugh.
I know.
I wish I never understood that reference.
Oh.
Everybody wishes they didn't understand that reference, but it's a ubiquitous meme at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm just glad that when I go out in the suit, nobody gives me that reference.
I don't think anyone would have the balls to give you that reference besides me, Monk. Everybody else is a little too scared. You're just that tall.
Maybe an idiot. I may be an idiot in some cases, but I'm not completely stupid.
Mm-hmm. But but now I will admit that I did, when I had my old written blog, I did talk about GARO for a bit, in the sense that I was when it comes, and I'll probably end up making this a future topic on GeekWatch, but the idea of converting tokusatsu to tabletop is not as easy as people seem to think it is. I would say that the two series that I would have the easiest time converting are Ultraman and GARO, and largely for the same reason.
Mm-hmm.
For all accounts, genre-wise, they are fairly consistent. GARO is always a fantasy-leaning series.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Ultraman has always leaned into science fiction, even before it was Ultraman,
definitely.
when it was just Ultra Q.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the Japanese attempt at the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, since that's what Ultra Q was.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think something else that's always worked to the favorite of something like this is the visual design. That very, and if I ever got the chance to speak with Amamiya, which I know is not happening, I would be curious as to what inspired this very brushstroke inspired design, because that's a major motif throughout the series.
Mm-hmm.
Like
in the early days, you will see at multiple points in the early, like in the Koga continuity, you will at multiple points frequently see like versions of the armor done in brushstroke style. Not to mention the logo during the eye catches is done in that same style.
Very, very much so. And there's attempts to simulate that. Now,
yeah,
I will admit that because we're dealing with a fantasy setup, obviously there are sets of rules to follow, and I think this is where GARO has its greatest strengths, in the fact that it is compared to other series, it is fairly ironclad with the rules that it's supposed to follow, whether it be the divide between knights and priests, the use of the armor, the different armor types, the rules when it comes to soul metal. Everything stays fairly consistent. I'd say one of the only things that really bends is how strict they are with the time limit, since an armor can only be active for 99.9 seconds before it starts to affect its user.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been times where it's given lip service.
Yeah.
Well,
Which,
I mean, in the first couple episodes of the original series, they kept somewhat to the strict time limit. They actually tried to keep the scene to the same time limit, not counting cutaways to other characters.
Yeah.
And I think that was a nice little gimmick for establishing what GARO is like. But personally, moving away from the time limit gave them more freedom to make the action a little more centralized. So it was a smart move in my
especially opinion. When the number of knights would increase later on in the series, like
exactly.
number of like the single number of knights in one season.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to the time limit, I think the reason why it eventually relaxed is because I think they had done it for long enough that they felt that they didn't need to keep hammering it. It had already been established enough.
Probably, yeah, I can see that being a reason.
Yeah, and like I said, by transitioning away from the time limit, they gained freedom to make the action sequences more embellished. Not that they weren't already embellished to begin with. I mean, those action sequences are godly for what they are,
Yes.
even back in the oldest series. But by moving away from the time limit, they didn't have to keep things so constrained. And in doing so, it really freed them up to explore exactly how badass they can make Garo look. Because let's be perfectly clear there. All of the Magic Knights are goddamn badasses, and anyone who says otherwise doesn't understand Garo worth any amount of
Well,
praise.
it's also made clear that you have to be some level of badass in order to be a Makai Knight for two reasons. One, the strength of the enemy that you're dealing with, and two, Makai armors are not easy to come by, and this is also the reason why they've made clear when it came to the question why so many of the Makai Knights are male. The ability to create new full-on armor is very limited, if not outright lost.
Yeah.
And because of that, merely by having one, you also have its title and its reputation along with it. So if you're not at the top of the top level, then you're not going to be able to even utilize it.
Yeah, hell.
Made clear by the fact that to even hold up the Garo Ken, the sword, you have to have a purity in yourself so strong that it goes far beyond any normal human being. Like, Koga Saejima had to train for years, decades even, before he could even lift the damn thing.
Like Batman?
I'd say a better comparison would be Thor, in the sense that the weapon and armor are made out of soul metal, and soul metal is respondent to individual will, which is why you could have it that a piece of soul metal could be light as a feather. But at the same time, if you don't have enough willpower, it feels like you're moving tungsten. I don't know about you, but tungsten ain't light.
No.
So you're saying it's not only physical strength, but it's also mental fortitude.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I would go beyond mental fortitude. It's strength of character.
Yes.
Because the soul metal doesn't just respond, oh, you're strong-willed, well, you can hold me then. No, the soul metal goes, oh, you're an asshole, I don't want to be around you, fuck off. Until you understand what
looks over at Barago.
But essentially it makes the decision of, oh, you finally understand what it means to be a Makai Knight. You understand what your responsibilities are now definitely going to be. Okay, pick me up, take me, let's go kill some horrors. But
the way you said that, by the way, Xana, the way you said that, phrasing, dude.
Yeah.
Well scripted, but still phrasing.
Yeah. Not to mention the whole thing with physics.
Also, another aspect, going back to that timer real quick, really, that is the embodiment of a Nietzsche quote right there. When one fights monsters, one must be careful not to become a monster.
Since if you end up going beyond that, you run the risk of becoming a lost beast.
The lost beast.
Like with Jenga.
Although of course, as we alluded to, there are other Makai Knights than just Garo. It's just that Garo is treated as the one that is the top of the food chain.
Mm-hmm.
the leader, the linchpin, the Makai Knight to lead all other Makai Knights.
Yeah.
The Golden Knight, GARO.
Mm-hmm. And what I d- and of course the first one that we end up seeing in the original run was Rei Suzumura, aka Zero, who there was a love-hate relationship when it comes to Zero.
Meaning you love to hate him?
Yeah. Well, some would even argue that's even a stretch, considering one particular scene in the original series.
We're not gonna touch on that for several reasons.
Let's just say he's dipped a bit into the Kusaka challenge.
We'll leave it at that. And I think if you know who we're talking about, I think you can let your imagination fill in the blanks there.
Yep.
They had to make a whole movie to try to make him look like a badass because that original series did not do him any justice.
No.
No favors for him.
I feel like the intent with how Zero was portrayed during the chapter of the Black Knight was to demonstrate what Koga would be like if he completely didn't have the morals that he does.
Also, minor correction, it's Chapter of the Black Wolf.
Yeah, Chapter of the Black Wolf. Sorry. And what I mean by that is, it's funny that you bring up that whole thing from Nietzsche about do not fight with monsters lest you become one.
And stare not long into the abyss, for the abyss stares back into you.
Because that is precisely what Zero was.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, in a good chunk of the series, there's the notion of people who are Makai Knights deciding that for some sort of greater good they need to get rid of their humanity.
Are you sure you're not mixing up your characters there? Because it sounds like you're more talking about Baraga than Zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, Argo than Zero, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Zero.
Mhm.
Zero.
I'd say that
Zero was the guy who he ditched his emotions and became just this. He gave me kind of a creepo, but he was a guy that just didn't realize. He first of all he was misled. He was led to believe Garo was the one that murdered his master when it was actually Bargo.
Yeah, I might have gotten a bit of swap, but the fact is there is that very thin line between the two that that is emphasized, and when it comes to the whole thing of feeling like they have to become less human for some greater good, I'm also referring to Beast of the Midnight Sun.
Okay.
Because granted that whole motif had played itself out by that point, and which is why that whole thing didn't last much in that form. But eventually, obviously, it would get its own successors when it comes to movies, spin-offs, and another series in the form of Makai Senki, which I liked Makai Senki. The only thing I didn't like was that attempt to present a tension between the knights and priests.
Yeah. For those who don't know about Garo, basically, yeah, while the knights were very much limited because of how many armors they had, there were also the Makai priests who could develop tools and use forms of magic to assist the knights.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, originally, before the Makai armors were created, the priests were the ones that battled the horrors, but they could only do so much and didn't do very good at that. So that's when the knights were founded and basically stepped in to finish the job.
Yeah.
But yeah, Makai Senki creates this narrative of it really wasn't even about the conflict was falsely created because one guy Well, okay, spoilers. One guy basically was jealous that he didn't get to become a Makai Knight because he was an idiot. And basically, he decided he was going to end the Makai Knights once and for all, so that he, as a priest, could be the one. Except he ended up creating his own variant of an armor, like a special magic version of the armor. Mm-hmm. It's complicated, and there's a reason why certain other YouTubers have called him Red Idiot, Akabaka.
Yeah,
because the guy's a fucking moron.
I mean, I get the intent. Once again, the whole thing of those who fight fight monsters, and there's a small part of me that wonders what would happen if a Makai Knight ended up meeting one of the angels of death. But that's a whole other bit of insanity. It'd probably be a case of, wait, that's not a chaos artifact. That's blessed by the Emperor. Wait, you killed demons? So do we. Of course, if I'm gonna go down that route, then I want you to imagine a bit of a dumbass headcanon in my case, that the horrors are not trying to feed off of energy by invading the human world. They're trying to run away from something that's in the human world, namely a certain Slayer that keeps trying to kill all of them.
No, that's not allowed.
Let it not be said that I am not a. Now, you want to know what's funny? I looked on my genealogy history, and it said that I am 50% asshole. I could have swore I was a total asshole.
I mean, you're not wrong.
I will admit that even though it's not essential, I had a bit of a laugh when it came to the DVD special that was GARO Gaiden.
Oh yes.
Now, in order to properly set things into perspective, I need to make something clear. The governing body for the Makai Knights is the Watchdogs, and one pair, who would later be revealed to be villainous, had I guess I could say son/butler.
And the man who played him, Kodama, is a legend.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Feising Musashi.
And there is one point in that Gaiden. So here's the thing. I've learned that Kodama is basically silent for a majority of that.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that one scene where he just rants in English at one of the female characters.
Yeah, so okay, let me set the scene for you. The female lead of the original GARO series, who is an artist, Kaoru. Thank you. I needed a reminder of that. Kaoru has a dream of sorts where she is tasked with finding the golden pencil. And so she goes along and meets a lot of the other characters of the franchise in very different forms. In fact, she actually meets the humanoid versions of the talking artifacts of
Zaruba.
Zaruba and Zero's version as well. But then it gets to the point where she meets the Watchdogs, or at least 3 children who are representing the Watchdogs, and Kodama. And then out of nowhere, as she's trying to talk with everybody, trying to figure out what's going on, Kodama just pipes up, takes his mask off that he's wearing, and goes on this tirade in full English about how the show basically fucked him over by not giving him any lines and all this other bullshit. It is one of the most
breaking the fourth wall, even mentioning that his character, even referencing the fact that his character is named after one of the major Shinkansen lines in Japan.
Oh, they had so much fun. You could tell they just like, okay, go ahead and whatever frustrations you have, just cut loose on this one. Just have fun with it. Just don't say anything offensive. Don't say anything, you know the rules. Just go ahead and cut loose a little bit. Mm-hmm. And if you have not seen this, look this up yourself. I know for a fact there's clips of this on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it. There is a clip of the entire tirade.
So have I.
Also the Mado ringer necklace that you're referring to involving Zeros was Silva.
Yeah,
Zaruba
but
Silva. Yeah.
Zaruba is another thing we have to bring up because of who voices him. Flutter, hold your tongue. I got to do this.
Hang on. Before you do that, I got to say two things about the guy then when you mentioned. Mm-hmm. One, it looks like a weird stage play. And two, Mark Musashi just went full Scott Steiner.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he pretty much
totally does. He totally does. But yeah, Zaruba, for those who don't know, Zaruba is basically a ring that the GARO wearers use to basically track horrors and basically let them know what's going on and a whole bunch of other crazy shit. It's complicated. But what makes Zaruba interesting is that he is voiced by a very familiar name to even those in the anime world. Mm-hmm. Any Jam Project fans in the crowd here tonight?
Hi.
Because, Zaruba is voiced by Mr. Anime himself, Hironobu Kageyama, and it is glorious.
Hell.
I love the fact that Hironobu got that part.
Mm-hmm. Hell.
Yes.
He even reprised his role in the anime.
Yep. Now, one joke that I ended up making when it came to Garo Gaiden, and I will freely admit this is a bad joke on my part, but I have to wonder if Mark Musashi was in a good mood because he just came off of kicking Keith Justice's ass again. Look, for those who don't know, it was a running gag for Keith Justice Hayward to get his ass kicked by Mark Musashi for a few years. even tried to drag Jay from Jabroni Pictures into it, and both of them got their ass kicked.
You don't fuck with Mark Musashi, motherfucker.
Jay just loved that.
But the thing that makes it a bit tricky to discuss continuity when it comes to Garo is the fact that there are multiple series, which this was something that I think was going to be inevitable, since one of the underlying themes when it comes to Garo is lineage and history, which is why it's honestly shocking that Riku Sanjo has never written an episode for them.
Yeah, not to mention there's an entire film that acts as an epilogue to the Koga continuity which the central theme of that focuses on that.
I just also remembered that final movie, the final movie of the Koga arc, where he enters that Oz like crazy world.
Yeah,
and then there's that Scarecrow character.
Wait, what?
Oh, you don't know?
No,
you don't know.
News to me.
Yeah, they basically, he's tasked by this like godlike creature to go to this weird dream world where basically things that are forgotten are given life. Like any non-living object that has been left behind or abandoned by their former owners become living things for a while, trying to regain their memories. Mm-hmm. And he has to recover, and he loses all of his equipment. He loses his jacket, he loses the sword, he loses, everything. So he goes on this quest, and along the way, he comes across this guy who's basically a scarecrow. Mm-hmm. Said scarecrow is played by another familiar name in Toku. Anyone up for some melons?
Oh! Yuki Kubota?
White
Yep.
Devil himself.
The good old Zangetsu himself.
Oh!
And it is so weird to see a guy that we've known for this very serious, very just straight-laced character, and he is anything but in this movie.
Stoic.
Yeah, such a stoic character. He is anything but in this movie. He it's a trip.
Yeah.
I should note that I almost feel bad for making that Zangetsu meme all those months ago. Almost.
Not to mention, speaking of Moonbow Traveler, one of the other guest characters in that film is actually played by an actor who originally played a knight in another series.
But I'd say the strangest member of the GARO lineage, or rather the case of the most blatant bit of product placement, if you prefer, is Goki. Goki was in a TV special called GARO Asura, and is
this yeah, I remember. I know about this special.
Is played by the ace of New Japan, the once in a century talent Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Yes, Tanahashi as a Makai Knight. Oh, and guess who the horror he has to slay in this special is played by?
Oh.
The rampaging King Kong himself, Togi Makabe.
Oh yeah, the guy whose entry music can't be played because of copyright bullshit.
Since it's a cover of Immigrant Song.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and yes, in order to defeat him, he does do the high fly flow.
Like I said, sometimes GARO can be there's plenty of times GARO can be serious, and there's plenty of times that GARO is anything but. But the thing is that eventually we would see others wielding the armor aside from Koga, and having jackets that would be at least a little bit more comfortable.
Comfortable jackets in my GARO? It's more likely than you think.
Also, damn it, Cure! I just saw what you posted in Toku Meme Help on the RBT server.
Not now, not here.
I know, but still. Moving on.
Kayfabe.
Yeah, I know. Moving on.
The first of these taking place in the distant future. Even though they never I don't think they ever outright stated the name, but it may as well be referred to as in the year 3000. Hey, I haven't done that gag since Numenera. But that was where we started with Ryga. Specifically through the one who shines in the darkness.
Yamio Terasumono.
And then 2 years later with Goldstorm.
Goldstorm's so good.
Yeah. I will admit, unlike Koga, who I got his deal very quickly because Koga is more of a pulp character. Ryga, it took a while for me to warm up to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was part of the point. Much like how for a while the armor was incomplete, thus it was referred to as Lost Shine GARO. Ryga wasn't quite at the level that he's supposed to be.
Yeah, that was kind of the whole point of his story arc was in Yami no Tarasamono, that he had to regain that. He had to regain that shine and you could see his character kind of evolve to that point where he starts off as just kind of a rebel of sorts, just kind of doing it whatever he wants, not realizing that, there is a method to the madness, and well, yeah.
You need to follow that method or the madness consumes you.
Yeah.
Exactly. Though, if we're going to bring up the Ryuga verse, we have to talk about the cavalcade of Toku actors who show up in this particular universe. Because we got at least 3 big ones. Now, the first 2 show up right away because we have Junya Ikeda showing up.
With Takaru Jakuzure.
Yeah, Takaru, aka Zen the Flame Sword Knight. Yeah, fucking guy from Gokaiger in a role that just goes completely in an opposite direction, because instead of just being
opposite of guy,
and yet
instead of it
pulls
just being
it off so fucking well.
He does. He really does. I've seen
versatile actor.
Because instead of it being just a happy-go-lucky fanboy, he is a very depressed playboy. He is a skirt chaser in many ways in that one.
Fanboy, playboy, it's the same energy.
And then we have Agari Kusagami, played by Tsunenori
Aoki,
aka Kamen Rider Duke. Fucking Ryoma Sengoku. That was not as far of a departure from that role. Those two are a lot more similar. And then you get to the Goldstorm arc and the arrival of Jinga Mikage, voiced by Masa Not My Hero Inoue.
Also, funny that you brought up funny that the whole JAV thing was brought up, because the whole thing with Jinga's wife, Amelie, played by a former JAV actress. In fact, in Kami no Kiba Jinga, the series that explained his descent, gave us backstory on him as a Makai Knight. You see him wearing Amelie as his jewelry, like the whole thing with Silva. But still, anyway, moving on.
Now, I should know when you said Kamen Rider.
36 brings up the fact that Ryuga's mentor in Makai was what? Oh yeah. Yeah, Kara 36 brings up the whole thing with Ryuga's mentor and Amelie's actress being other characters in Makai Senki and Red Requiem.
Yeah, although
Monk, you were saying?
Yeah, before I was so rudely interrupted.
My mistake, Meldra.
When you had mentioned Kamen Rider Duke, at first I had misheard it, and I thought you said Kamen Rider Douche.
Yeah.
Well, not far off on that one.
No. I'm waiting for at least one of us to bring that up.
Which one? Because we got 2 and that.
Cure, have you heard what Tsunenori Aoki had gotten up to a couple years ago?
Oh, I choose to ignore that.
In drunken stupors.
I know of it. I just choose to ignore it.
Fair enough.
Anyway.
Now, when it came to, I'd say if there's anything that the Ryuga arc really helped contribute to is the concept of expanding the Makai Knights. Now, granted, it is kind of pushing things a little bit that you have several Makai Knights within on this particular assignment, when previously there was the implication that a individual Makai Knight is assigned a certain area as their own jurisdiction, which was why it was supposed to be a big deal that Zero showed up in Garo's territory. And in fact, even doing that was breaking the law. Well, that and having the two fighting each other was as well. But
But they always seem to ignore that one, don't they?
Yeah, when it comes to the laws, that's one of those things that is treated fairly loosely.
It's like pirates.
Are we doing the whole thing about parlay now?
Wrong part of pirates. They're more like guidelines, really.
I get it.
Yeah, I get it too.
Now, the most recent addition to this particular affair has been Ryga, who is the direct descendant of Koga.
Yeah, Koga's son.
Mm-hmm.
In Makai no Hana.
And because of the approach to that because of the fact that he hasn't really had a whole lot of series under his belt, there's not a whole lot that can really be said about Ryga. I mean, he
only has he just has Makai no Hana and Moonbow Traveler under his belt. That's it.
Why didn't we get the second season of Makai no Hana?
That's a very good question.
I don't think there was ever really a plan for such a thing.
Yeah, neither do I.
At the same time, the other matter was the gradual attempt to try and redeem Ray, and whether or not it actually succeeded, that's going to be up to you through the white and black chapters of Zero Black Blood, and then eventually Zero Dragon Blood 3 years ago. Now, whether or not that actually succeeded, I'll leave up to you. But at the very least, it gave. I'd say the Blood trilogy, as I'm gonna call it, gave a little bit of expansion for Zero. But it's one of those things where there's always going to be that elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, you if you can ignore that one thing, you might be able to see Zero as a redeemable character, but I know for a lot of people that scene is a deal breaker for them. It's just you can't that's going too far for a lot of people, and it's understandably so, but there's just nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
I do believe, however, that the Blood trilogy does give us a better understanding of his character in general.
Yeah. Now one further spin-off I feel I should note in part because I felt this particular bit of characterization was a very natural thing for him. I'd like to talk a little bit about Jinga, who's been a villain and occasionally a tragic hero.
Mm-hmm.
And is played by my favorite douche in Masahiro Inoue.
Yep. Hence why I called him Masahiro, not my hero Inoue.
and
if
this
was the role that Inoue was destined to play.
I honestly think that Inoue should play more villain roles.
Agreed.
Hell yeah.
Now, despite the issues that decade had, I will admit I have a soft spot for his portrayal in general, and of course I mentioned that he was the best character in Zio. But when it comes to, there are certain people that just have a natural presence that's going to lean more towards protagonist or antagonist. Inoue is one of those who feels that is most natural playing a villainous character.
Agreed.
I mean, if you want to get technical with Decade, can you really call Decade a hero?
I've been arguing that for years. This is why I say, screw Movie War 2010. I don't care how canon it is. All Riders versus Dark Shocker was the canon ending the Decade because it showed that he was meant to be the villain all along.
I would actually argue that he's neither hero nor villain. He's a force of nature. Only because of the fact that he's there to destroy the world. But it seems that his destruction of worlds is only for worlds that should not be.
Fair enough. You know what? That's a good argument.
I would talk to the night at a time, nor to place.
It's for that that's why I said that he had the best arc.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the other thing that I will admit I got plenty of a kick of is having a Makai knight / whore who knows how to take his wine. to the point that he has a bit of a rose motif when it comes to his own transformations.
Hell, his Makai Knight name is Rose.
Yeah, which I know some people when Super Saiyan Rose became a thing in Dragon Ball Super, a lot of people were wondering what's the point of the accented A in that. So reference to wine.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah. As someone who's had a rosé wine, I can attest to this.
I've had rosé wine, but it won't surprise you at all if I say that I'm not much of a wine guy.
Me neither, really.
Mead and Scotch; those are my things.
Now,
wine just grape juice.
now I will now I do feel it. I don't feel 100% comfortable talking about it here, but I do think some discussion should be had when it comes to the anime adaptation, because compared to other tokusatsu, this is something that doesn't happen all that much. A tokusatsu series jumping into anime.
Hell, it was the first.
No, it was not.
Wait.
Because Kamen Rider SD exists, and even though it was a gag, it still counts. And
hell, I'll do you one better. Keita got an anime before GARO did.
Diver.
Guyver was Guyver doesn't qualify in this.
No.
Yeah,
it was a manga first.
Oh.
But no, Keita is the better example because it got an anime in the early 2000s.
Right.
A damn good one, if you ask me.
DJ, we don't talk
about that. That didn't happen.
No, we pretend that didn't happen. We don't talk about that.
Happen.
But
anyway, back on topic.
But I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail when it comes to GARO the animation and its successors. And the main reason I'm not doing that is because of the fact that the anime version of GARO and the Tokusatsu version are almost two completely different shows.
They're treated as two entirely different continuities. The anime series has its own continuity.
There's also the fact that the GARO anime is a lot more European in its approaches, naming conventions, and so on, to the point where the Valiente Kingdom has a lot of references to Spain.
Yeah, with the main character being named Leon Luis.
Specifically Spain during the Spanish Inquisition, because nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition.
I'm not going to get into that.
Now again, that's not to say it's bad. It's just different. And to be quite honest, it's one of those things where I would be hesitant to recommend the GARO anime to anybody unless they've already seen the original Tokusatsu, simply because of the fact that even if there's not a direct connection, it does rely on some of those assumptions from the Tokusatsu.
Right.
I would hesitate to recommend any of the GARO animes just because their opening songs are not necessarily made by Jam Project.
Well, there's that too, but look, if you can't get Jam Project, could you at least get, I don't know, Psychic Lover to do something? I'm sure they.
I know, right?
And how did they not get Jam Project considering Kageyama was voicing Zarba in that? Like,
Well, here's the weird thing. The only time that they did get Jam Project was for the movie sequel to the first series.
That's not true. Jam Project has done opening themes and ending themes for the GARO live actions for forever.
Well, yeah.
Well, no, that's what we're saying is for the anime though. Like, why only that one anime movie?
Oh, because it was a movie and not an anime. I mean, obviously it's an anime, but what I'm saying is it's a
the
movie.
opening and ending are
It still just seems kind of odd to me, honestly.
Agreed.
Oh, it's definitely odd. I've literally just gone through the entire list of all the GARO series, and it is only the animes that do not have a song by Jam Project, and I'm just like, but why though? And I'm sorry, but that is a point of contention enough for me to say, well, the live actions have themes by Jam Project, but these animes don't. And while the animes are fantastic anime-wise, and great...
bullshit!
Wait, are you saying bullshit for them being fantastic, or Cure, explain yourself.
Where's your proof?
Would you like to qualify that statement, sir?
Care?
Did he crash?
No.
Are we sure he didn't crash?
Council.
That's the only one, though.
Yes, that's the point. That's the one from the movie.
That's the point we're making.
Yeah.
Hokuin is the only anime to have an opening have one or more openings performed by Jam Project. Crimson Moon and Vanishing Line don't.
Yeah, that's our point. That there's only that when it comes to the animes, there's no Jam Project except for that one right there.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Mm-hmm. Now, DJ Toku brings up that it has the potential due to its medium to expand the lore far better than the live action due to not being limited by the restriction. I see where Toku is coming from on that, but that doesn't really hold up due to the fact that that for all intents and purposes, the anime and the live action works are in two different universes.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'd say that was a calculated move to do that kind of thing.
So apparently, Kara 36 clarifies that the only time Vanishing Line did have an opening performed by Jam Project, but that was the second opening.
The point is that it's still strange that so little of Jam Project was used, especially since it's very much part of the identity.
Action. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jam Project is part and parcel for the live action. It should have been brought straight into the animes.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. when it comes to
when it comes to I do remember at one point seeing footage for a game adaptation of Garo that looked about what I'd expect. It looked like a PS2 era beat 'em up.
Yeah, there is one, which they actually reference in Versus Road. They actually show that in the first episode of Versus Road.
Yeah. Now, I will note that I have not seen Versus Road, but there's a small part of me that will always find it funny when somebody looks at the animes, which I think a fair few of them have already been dubbed, and then jumps.
They all have.
Oh, they all have, and then jumps into the live action stuff and is completely knocked for a loop. That's why I said that looking at both of them in a shared universe doesn't work.
Right.
It really doesn't.
When it comes to I think something that works in the favor of something like Garo is how different it is compared to pretty much the rest of what one expects from Tokusatsu. Like when it comes to doing this sort of darker storytelling, there were some one-offs that did darker stories in the 90s, but not a whole lot else. Now, obviously, there's the Dark Age of Kamen Rider, or the Heisei, I believe it was the Heisei era of Godzilla, but both of them are under their own separate trappings. But in terms of a weekly show that was very much on the darker end of the spectrum, that isn't as much of a thing. And let's not forget that it's not like Toei or Subaraya weren't paying attention, because if you look at certain other tokusatsus over the last decade, it's very clear that some people were taking inspiration from the style of storytelling that Garo was doing. I know that Des has brought up Wizard in one case. Or whether or not Wizard was taking direct clues from Garo is debatable, but in terms of thematic clues, cues, I should say, I could definitely see that.
Yeah. Wait, did you mention Red Requiem already, or
we haven't
mentioned any of the movies?
We're like I said, with something like this, we're casting a broad net. So focusing on just one movie specifically would be kind of pointless. Although I will remark about one thing with Red Requiem. If I'm not mistaken, didn't that movie get advertised as being in 3D?
It did.
Somehow it didn't, and somehow it didn't fall into some of the 3D traps we saw in the mid 2010s.
Thankfully,
it had a couple of scenes that clearly were designed for 3D.
But I was able to watch it I should note, when I mentioned those blatantly obvious moments, it's one of those cases where the sole purpose of the scene is to show off the 3D effect.
There was at least one scene that definitely was that, when they're in the club and the mirrors are shattered and there's all that glass everywhere. That was clearly designed to show off the 3D. But you're right, they didn't use it all too often. Like it wasn't like half the movie.
Whereas you look at something like say that Green Hornet movie from a few years ago that was a complete shit fest. That was very clearly built with that in mind, and it's one of the. There are I should note that there are two kinds of 3D movies. There's the kind where extra expenses paid to get the 3D cameras and get the heavier rigging because they're heavier cameras, and it's meant for that from the get-go. And then there are the ones that the 3D stuff is put in post. And it's very obvious to tell which one is which, because the latter tends to end up sucking the big one. Now, granted, it's not to say that the former is any better, because well, the closest thing to a good 3D based film is still Avatar, and that's even stretching things.
Yeah.
Since that's basically Dances with Smurfs. But when it comes to the use of 3D, it's one of those things that I'm glad is more or less dead these days. I mean, even if it weren't for the fact that nobody can go to the theater these days, it would have stayed dead.
It was already on its way out.
But the other, I'd say one of the other major factors with something like GARO that's worked in its favor is a far stronger use of consistency. I'd say the only series I can think of that tries to be as consistent with itself is Ultraman. Although a problem that the Ultra series has and has had for a while is relying too much on the past.
Yeah.
Right. Ever since Ginga.
When was the last time that the Ultraman had a series that didn't use past Ultras as part of its transformation gimmick?
Well, as part of their transformation gimmick, Mabius would. Well, no, might be a little bit later than that, but yeah.
As part of the transformation gimmick, yes, but not as a part of the series. Since there is an arc in the series where the Ultra Brothers do show up. Period.
Yeah, that wasn't like part of the transformation gimmick. Ginga is where that started. Ginga is where that started.
What year did Ginga come out?
That series, ever since Ginga, they just.
And I'd say and while sometimes that was done to illustrate a point, and in some other cases it was to give certain Ultras a shine that never got their own full on series. Hi Zero. It's one of those things that has really run its course, and it's only been buoyed by having some decent characterization. I'd say, as much as I groaned when I saw that Zet was doing the same thing, I've let it slide because of the fact that Zet's has done a lot much better when it comes to its characterization.
It has much better.
But with something like GARO, it has a very clear visual identity that you're not going to see in anything else. And I think the main reason for that is the fact that it's relatively young compared to the other entries within Tokusatsu.
Since the series as of this year has only celebrated its 15th anniversary. With Versus Road being the 15th anniversary project.
Yeah. Whereas Ultraman's been around since the 60s. Super Sentai and Kamen Rider have been around since the 70s. And because of that, it's gotten to the point where they and the fact that they've spun out into different styles for so long that it's hard to maintain a visual identity in that front. Whereas with something like GARO, it has a much stronger series Bible in a sense. Like you're not going to going to confuse GARO with anything else.
Very true.
I'd say another thing that's worked in its favor is the lack of the giant battles, which as much as we might like the Max or like Kaiju designs, I will always be partial to the more on foot battles. Like,
Right.
Yeah. Though that's not to say Garo doesn't have the giant battles, but they usually save those for the big finales. Like they are the godlike horrors at the very end.
Yeah, like
Where-
Messiah in the
Messiah.
first
I was
series.
about to say, Messiah.
horrors.
Anybody?
yeah,
Yeah, the Messiah level horrors that you fight at the end of most series, where there's these giant godlike creatures, and most of the time they tend to be naked females.
So
Anyone wrap their head around that?
So basically, what would happen? So basically, what would happen if the madman behind Bayonetta made a Toku villain?
Yeah, basically.
He did.
And
Mhm.
usually it involves Garo getting some kind of one-time special armor in order to fight them.
Which is usually winged.
of course, if you're gonna aim for the head, it's gonna be a long way up. But
True.
but unless you want to have Garo do some sort of Shadow of the Colossus shit, which I don't.
No.
I mean,
Well,
it
maybe,
might,
but
it might be
I
funny
don't think the
if he
censors
climbed-
would like that all too well.
Yeah,
No.
I was going to say it might be funny if he climbed it using his sword, though.
Oh God!
Oh, Jesus.
What about
Get a little bit of gore in there, why don't we?
Yeah, no. We're not as far as I'm concerned, Cronenberg is not taking any work.
Aww, but it would fit so well.
No.
And this is where I have to bring back my favorite line of "God damn it, Xana."
Oh, awesome! You broke out that old chestnut.
Mm-hmm. Well. I will, Shades. I will note that if by some miracle I end up meeting Ian Sinclair, whether it be in the temple or at a con, I'm gonna have to bring up that to him, and probably have a "God damn it, Ian" moment once again.
Moving on.
But now granted, on-foot battles have been a fixture when it comes to something like Kamen Rider, but in the last, I don't know, decade or so, they've attempted to bring in the giant stuff. Usually at the
more
end.
recently.
Usually at
From
the end.
onward.
But in the last couple of years, they've started to lean a little bit more into things outside of tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where Garo has remained fairly consistent. Like we said, the only time they really bring out the giants is during things like at the end of a movie or at the end of a TV season. Never as a monster of the week.
And I think part of the thing is that it kind of stems from another big aspect of Garo that stands out from more recent Toku stuff on the big two, is that because this is not being marketed to kids, I mean, obviously it can't, it doesn't have to rely on toy sales.
No.
You can sell a couple action figures, sure, but you're not selling collectible gimmicks for Garo. It's just
No,
not
you're
possible.
not.
So they don't have to shove those kind of gimmicks into a Garo series.
Mm-hmm.
They are able to completely focus on just telling a fucking good story, which, it works in its favor. It doesn't have that restriction tied around its neck like a freaking ball and chain.
Thank God.
Well, let's be honest though. While it isn't marketing toys to children, it is marketing figure arts to adults.
Yeah, but it does, it doesn't have to go out of its way to shove in stuff like that. It does, that's just stuff that comes naturally from the series. You can have, you're going to have armored heroes. So of course, there's going to be like figures for that, but you don't have to shove in like 500 collectible gimmicks. Looking at you, Kamen Rider.
Also, fucking everything has a figure art these days.
Yeah,
It's not exactly a
that's
high
kind of a
bar to
moot point.
cross.
Well, but most of the GARO figure arts tend to be part of their more deluxe and limited lines than normal stuff.
Yeah, because they know it's going to be adults watching it, so they're going to they're going to be willing
They're
to
going to
spend more
drop
money.
the 200 to 300 USD on a figure arts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, if you're thinking about passing judgment on that, I'd like to ask you a question, Xana. How much would you be willing to spend on a 40K army?
Nothing.
Mildred, you said bullshit.
I've never paid for any 40K armies in my life because I don't play the game. GW can suck my dick.
Okay, better example. War Machine.
I don't play any war tabletop games. Now, if you had asked the proper question, how much money have you spent on Gunpla, Zan? I'm not answering that question.
Have you beaten by a mile?
That's not the point, Karen. You damn well know it. Don't try that.
I'm not answering how much I paid $800 for a unicorn phenom. I am not answering that question at all. It's gold and has phoenix wings. I love it.
Kier, I'm gonna have to hit a button on you, Kier. I'm sorry, dude, but yeah.
And I think it's because of that there will always something like GARO will for years to come will be that dividing line between people who are the kind of in the moment Toku fans, i.e. the only thing that they know is Power Rangers, and the people who are willing to dig. And I don't know about you, but I choose to be in the latter category because I can at the very least say that I never settled for the comfortable.
Well, there is a reason that in my folder of Tokusatsu shows, I have choice Kamen Rider and Super Sentai series, but all of GARO is there.
Right.
Yeah.
There's some Ultraman. There's some Metal Heroes.
And I will note that was the reason. Some of you who have seen my entries for Toku Means may have remembered when I made that Blues Brothers gag.
Oh yeah.
Now, for those who don't recall, it was basically the case of saying, "What kind of Toku do you usually play here?" Oh, we got both kinds. We got Kamen Rider and Super Sentai. Now, I had put Ultraman fans on the Blues Brothers on that, and I wasn't trying to make a dig at Ultraman fans, but what I was trying to demonstrate was the fact that you have a lot of people who claim to be fans of a given medium, who claim to be these long-time hardcore fans, and yet their actions state otherwise. And if somebody wants to only be a casual fan and only focus on the stuff that's at the top of the stream, I'm perfectly fine with that. But don't pass yourself off as a hardcore when your actions don't demonstrate it.
Right.
Yeah.
If all you guys want to focus on is Super Sentai and Kamen Rider, go for it. It's good stuff. Nobody's going to fault you for that. It's when you say, yeah, I know all about Tokusatsu, that the rest of us look at you and start poking at all the little holes in your facade.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And this is I want to make clear as well, this is not a phenomenon unique to Tokusatsu. I have made many a rant about the contradiction of somebody claiming to be a tabletop fan, and yet all I see them talk about is D&D.
Yeah.
No, my one of the favorites I always run into. Oh, you like RPGs? totally. Final Fantasy is the greatest thing ever.
Oh, Jesus.
That's my
I may not be the
favorite
most
one to run
hardcore
into.
I may not be the most hardcore of a lot of fandoms, but I can at least say that I'm usually somewhat outside the norm.
Yeah, same here.
When it comes to fandom in general, I think the real problem is the elitism of some people versus others.
Mm-hmm.
We here all have an acceptance. There are going to be people who don't want to do the digging. They just want to consume something nice, something entertaining, and something not necessarily as eclectic and esoteric as, say, in this example, GARO. They may not necessarily want to see something more, I guess, of a more serious plot drive with some higher quirks and lesser known tropes compared to the mainstream tokusatsu of Super Sentai Kamen Rider, whose tropes are very well known, the stories are very well defined, and it's very generally easily consumable. Mm-hmm. And so we here, all of us, have varying levels of comfortability with these subjects. Monk said he's firmly on the side of the line that continues to dig and always wants to find something else to discover. That's technically hardcore. And the real problem is when the people who are at that line, I've watched a lot of GARO, and you've probably never heard of it. When that attitude starts happening, that's where the problem occurs, and that's why fandom starts having internecine wars.
Yeah, I've made my attempts to not do that. What I have done is give a few teases here and there, which is basically my way of saying casting bait. What I at the same time though, and I made this clear when I did that little rant on the Eric and Andre meme that I was seeing sharing around a couple days ago.
Mm-hmm.
There is shit in both lawns, both the old guard and the young guns, and it's one of those things where both of them have to be addressed. Otherwise, you're just spinning the hamster wheel.
Yes.
When it comes to something like GARO, it's one of those things where any chance that I have, I will introduce it to people. And in a weird way, I've had instances where I've introduced people to GARO, then they end up wanting to learn more about Tokusatsu, and then I introduce them to Kamen Rider.
And hey, it's a fantastic thing when that happens. A lot of people, in my experience, so this is anecdotal, take it for what you will. Mm-hmm. The elitism problem happens when the old guard is so focused on gatekeeping to a fault. Because every hobby, don't get me wrong, every hobby needs a form of gatekeeping. You need to keep out the elements who want to subvert your hobby into a way that doesn't reflect what the hobby is anymore. We've seen it happen numerous times across all hobbies. I mean, it's a big thing we see happening in tabletops and in video games and in anime even to this day. But the core audience, the people that actually love and care about this thing, want to make sure that these people coming in to subvert aren't able to do so. When they get overzealous, that's when the issue tends to occur, where we see the elitism of hardcore versus casual, and that's the big one that we need to address. Well, why are you? Because I don't like GARO. Well, because clearly you're not a fan. No, they are a fan. They're just not a fan at your level.
Yeah, it's something I've kind of learned as I've been doing my anime watch parties over on my server is that, my goal there is to introduce all my fans to new anime that they've probably never even seen before. Now, am I expecting them to like everything I show them? No, because I don't even like everything I show them.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows us to see where our tastes are, and it shows them, hey, like, okay, here's a genre you probably never considered before. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you don't. At least now you'll know what it is. You'll know it exists, and you can explore that. If it finds out you find a series that you really love, hey, let's see if we can find more of that.
I actually like the fact that you brought up that you don't even like. Not everything is going to be a winner for everyone. That's impossible.
No.
There's no such thing as a universally appealing single genre or single entertainment product. So, being as ironically, I'm going to use this word. I'm not going to use the word ironically. It's just ironic that I'm using this word. The diversity by which we actually apply to all of the different shows, the different games that we play, that we watch, it actually allows everybody to come closer together to discuss, well, I don't really like this genre. Well, here's what I find really cool about that genre. I can see how that's cool because I find it over in this genre. And you just connect that way because of the diverse range of products that you have at hand.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that really applies here because GARO is a very, very specific, has very specific tastes. I guarantee you, not everybody is going to suddenly become massive fans of the series. It is very dark. It is very gory at times. It is very horror themed. It has a lot of nudity involved in it in many ways. So there's a lot of elements that could easily turn people away. But at that same time, there's going to be a lot of people who find this to be a refreshing change of pace from and to see it as something completely different from what you would expect a tokusatsu to be. When most casual people think of Toku, they think of Power Rangers. This is so much the antithesis of what Power Rangers is in every conceivable way that it could be very refreshing, and it could bring people into this medium that would have never even considered it. But at the same time, it could turn people away who are so comfortable with what that norm is that this is just too much for them.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
But for everyone that ends up getting turned away, there are inevitably going to be those who stick around, and that's what makes it all worth it.
Right.
It would be very easy for me to say, there's no way to get people into it. I may as well just follow the trend. I am not capable of doing that, and I don't want to be capable of doing that. I would rather try and fail at expanding than not try at all.
That's what I.
You okay there? Sound like stuff crashed down around you.
No, it's just bed
Moving around. But yeah. I think that's the main point we get at with these shows is like we need to put a spotlight on these kind of like more niche, more cult series, and that's kind of, and again, this goes back to what I do. I put a spotlight on anime that normally you probably never even knew existed because everyone's always focused on the big stuff. So we need to have people out there who put a spotlight on the lesser known stuff. Not maybe so much to guarantee that you're gonna like it, but just to say, hey, just check this out. You might like this.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has their own taste. Everybody has their own quirks. That's just what makes everybody unique.
Even with the whole own taste, own quirks, if there's one thing that I do think should be emphasized with the whole affair is I won't say not to, but the dangers of complacency.
Yeah.
Because
be willing to test the waters.
because complacency is, well, death.
That is always true. As cliche as it sounds to some people, complacency is the truest death. And the reason for that is if you become complacent, you stop learning and discovering.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And to that particular end, there's obviously gonna be more to discover. And for my own thing, I ended up discovering a bit of a comedy series within Tokusatsu that I think I outright stated it managed to out Akiba Ranger.
Oh yes, yes. I know of the series that Mildred is referring to. Mildred is referring to a currently running, granted there's only one season of it out, a currently running series focusing on a group of local heroes from Fukuoka, Dogangers. And Shades, you'll be happy to hear about this. One of the villains, one of the members of the Corporation of Evil, is designed by Studio Trigger.
You have my attention.
Bring this up in the eye catch for her first Focus episode, but still, yeah.
I remember seeing Dogengers when it was coming out in April.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
I might give that a shot.
At first, you had my attention. Now you have my interest.
Yes.
Just some examples, looking in TV tropes of things that are done. When Yabai Kamen explains his evil plan in the form of an animation, the heroes have commentary that the editing is terrible.
They're pouring a Deadpool.
Oh, they break the fourth wall a lot, apparently.
Yeah,
the fourth wall is nothing but smoldering bricks.
In this series, it's broken frequently.
Yep.
Hell, Maddie might enjoy this series because one of the members of the team, El Brave, is a former wrestler.
But
yep.
Anyway,
but the point in bringing both of these things up is that there's always room to expand.
There is.
I'm not saying everybody has to or get on my level or something, but at the very least, I'd rather try and expand than simply be a dog sitting on a nail.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that particular theme is the best spot to act as the closing ceremonies on this semi look into the dark horse of Tokusatsu that is GARO. Now, I will note a couple things as far as what's coming down the pipe. First, I am going to be taking a while I will be putting out the final two November reviews that I had scheduled, I will not be putting out any Gaming Monk reviews for the month of December. Because I think I've earned myself at least a little bit of a break from that.
Yeah.
We can call it a holiday repose.
I can go with that. That said, I do have my fair share of interviews planned, and thankfully, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing any 2-in-1s like I did yesterday and today.
Good.
Tomorrow, our old friend Ash of Creativity, aka James Streisand, will be coming on.
Oh yeah.
Tuesday, I'll be bringing in Brian Shutter, the guy behind Neon Lords of the Toxic Wasteland, and we'll probably end up having a bunch of bad jokes there too.
Bad jokes from Mildra? Perish the thought.
Oh, fuck you.
Oh yeah. That reminds me about last week. Any update on that one, Mildra?
Which one from last week?
The one you said, the one that it. I'm trying to remember the Kickstarter spotlight.
If I don't have something scheduled for it, then assume that that communication went dead. It happens.
Okay.
But Wednesday I'll have Adam Lawson on, who's working on Asunder. As I mentioned during the spotlight this Saturday, Asunder is essentially a dark fantasy RPG where no one has any access to metals.
Oh yeah, I remember you bringing
Stone
that up.
Age.
Not necessarily Stone Age, because people will manipulate plants, bone, and insects.
That's still technically Stone Age.
Saturday, not Saturday, but Friday, James E. Jackson is going to be coming back specifically to talk about the service that he's started up called StartPlaying.games. Which is all about well, he's a paid DM by profession, so this is basically his means of getting people who want to get a game off the ground with people who know what the hell they're doing. And of course we'll be back with another episode of both the Gazette on Saturday and GeekWatch on Sunday. And I know somebody might ask, why am I not doing anything on Thursday? Why would I? Thursday's Thanksgiving. Why the hell would I deprive anybody from that?
Exactly.
I mean, and why would you deprive yourself from the one cheat day ahead of you that you have to enjoy?
Well, especially since guys, I'm still banned from the kitchen.
Oh, sad face.
Damn it.
I'm still banned from the kitchen because I decided to fuck with the cranberry sauce.
Yeah.
You keep doing this to yourself.
I haven't done that gag in years.
They don't take chances. You keep pissing everybody off. Of course, they're gonna be like, nope, not even gonna risk it.
Exactly.
It's not my fault. It's so easy to piss people off.
You have only yourself to blame, Monk.
I need my cousin stop inviting me.
Yeah. Although I don't even know if Thanksgiving's even gonna happen. Although I do, that's another matter entirely. That said, the last two reviews that I have planned for this month. Now, the Emberwind one is already out, and Emberwind is a fascinating topic. Let me see what's left. So the last ones that I have are going to be Against the Dark Master and Endless Realms. I've mentioned this a couple times, but I'm also working on a bit of a side project that I may try and debut in January at the earliest. Anybody who is familiar with Straight to Hell will be very familiar with what I'm planning.
Ooh.
But that is a story for another time, in another game. So until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk, and